Oh, I think it's something like work. I see you trying to edit work. No.
Okay, guys, come out of that join me thing. I can't get the audio to work. I've already posted a link to Google Classrooms with the stream, and it should be live. Yep, and we do this thing. I sent a new link to Google Classrooms. Tega, please click on it. Just make sure that it's working. Make sure that you can hear me. It says that it's working. I just need confirmation. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Not in live person. You can hear me through your You take off your headphones and say, yeah, you can hear me. Jesus Christ. After you took off your headphones.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me in person. Listen to me in there. Yeah? Okay, good. All right. So forget the join me thing. I'm gonna probably cancel that. We're gonna do it via this stream. Everybody's got the kitchen file, yeah? You can't hear me? Well, okay. Have you what, did you plug it in the wrong one? You can hear me now? Oh, it wasn't plugged in all the way. Okay. Come on, let's get this underway. Okay. So right now, what we're gonna do with this is we are gonna turn this model into, and we're gonna use this model as a rendering base. The first thing that we're gonna do is I want you to right click and unfreeze all, because some of the assets are frozen in here. Now a bunch of these assets, because this file was taken from one of my old OBJ files, the hierarchy has been moved to the center for nearly everything, as you can see, but it doesn't really matter as we won't be animating or moving anything. All we're going to be doing is rendering. Okay, the next thing we need to do is place a camera inside of our model, so I'm going to do that by going to create camera. I'm just going to use a free camera, and then I'm going to click on my perspective mode to put the camera on. You'll notice that it's facing downwards, so we're going to move it by clicking on our angle snap at the top, and then I am going to rotate my model 90, my camera 90 degrees, and then I'm going to move it upwards. Okay, now I want to split my workspace into two. The way I'm going to do this is by clicking on this plus at the corner. I'm going to go to configure viewports. I'm going to go to layouts, and then I'm going to change it to 2 frames. Yep. So here it says the top and front. Press OK. And then in my left view, I'm going to press C for camera on the keyboard. And then I'm going to turn my wireframe by right clicking and changing it to default shade. Okay. And from my perspective view, I'm going to middle mouse click, press P to get back into perspective. And then I'm going to right click and default shade that as well. And press F4 to get my edge faces in. Forget that. Go to Google Classrooms. There's a link that the stream is going to. Yep. Open up 3DsMax. And there's a file from Google Classroom also that you should download called Kitchens. Okay. So what I'm going to do now in my perspective view is I'm just going to reposition my camera pull it forward a bit. Make sure that it's inside the model. And then actually on my camera view on the left, where it says camera, I'm gonna right click and go show safe frames. That's Shift and F. Okay, what this will do is we'll put our safe frames in, but what I've noticed is that my camera is a bit too square. So I'm gonna go into the render setup. The shortcut is F10. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change my output size in common. My output size, where it says custom, I'm gonna change it to HD TV. And then I'm gonna click the 1280 by 720 frame size. And this, you see it now, it looks like a widescreen TV. Okay, the first rendering setup we're gonna use is scanline render. So you have to always make sure that you're in production render mode. Yeah, we're in production mode. It says scan line. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that now. And the next thing I want to do with my camera selected is go to modify, and then I'm just gonna make sure that my camera is in 24mm. That's nice and wide. And also I'm gonna pull it up a bit so I can see my lamps. Say around here. Yep. Okay. Now, first thing we're going to do with the camera selected is I am going to press the render production, that's Shift and Q. Whoops. Let me move my camera forward a bit. See me? Okay, so when I've done the first render now, you can see that it came out at 0.01 second. It didn't take any time for it to render. I want you guys to do the same. Yep, I'll pause until you guys have caught up. Are you doing it? Did you download the file as well? Did you get to the file?
Germany.
Not reading all kinds of things. I don't
Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go to follow the stream. Get the stream. What I'm gonna do now is go to create lights, standard light, and then I'm gonna drop a skylight. So I've clicked that. I'm gonna only place that into my perspective view. Once you've done that, once you've clicked once, you want to make sure that you right click, otherwise you're going to be creating loads, and every time you create a new one, you're going to be multiplying the time it takes for this to render. Now with my light selected, I'm gonna go to modify, and then I'm gonna tick on cast shadows and leave it at 20 samples. Now I've just placed that in. I'm gonna click back on my camera and go render production again, shift and Q. Now this is gonna take much longer to render, but let's leave it to do so. This should take anywhere between 1 minute and 1 minute and 30 seconds from my last test. Hello Charles, late again. Okay. We're doing YouTube now. Links on Google Classroom, yeah? Okay. Now, as you can see, it's extremely dark in this room, but there are shadows being cast and light being bounced around, even though it's very minimal. Now, scanline render is not the best render to use, but it's the most basic. It can render really fast if there are minimal lights inside and stuff. But we're not going to be using this. We're going to be using a renderer called Arnold renderer. But I'm just showing you this now so you're familiar with it, and show you how to switch renderers and different materials that come with switching renderers. Now what I want all of you to do is I want you to make yourself a notepad file or a Word document, and every render you do, I want you to write down the specifics of that render, i.e. no lights or 2 lights or a specific light, and I also want you to record the time it took for it to render. You can get that information at the bottom of the screen. Once the render is complete, it will come up and say this render took this long and the calculations for the render took this long. And what we're going to have to do when we're making our models and our animations, once we've applied our lights and our textures, is you're going to have to weigh up, especially if we have animation, you're going to have to weigh up the positives or negatives of your rendering time when it comes to, I need to render 400 frames and it's going to take 2 minutes per render. There's 25 frames times 2 minutes, and then you're going to get a number of what you need. Okay, so this render actually took 3 minutes and 26 seconds. Something's happening with the computer because the last time it only took 1 minute and 30 seconds. But as you can see, there's a lot more volume in this area. There's shadows cast. It looks like a dim light, but obviously this time is way too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press X on my render window. A way that we can check lights if you think something is wrong with your scene is we can go to Tools and Light Lister. As you can see, our light is in there. We could actually rename our light and do some modifications with it, and you can also select your light from this, with this being selected, and then what I'm going to do is press delete. When you refresh, the light will be gone. You don't have to do it that way, but if you have loads of lights, that's one way to do it. Okay, so moving on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch renderers to Arnold. And I'm going to do this by going to my render setup and going to target, no, that is always going to stay on production, renderer, and then switch to Arnold. Okay, so that is switched now. It says I'm in Arnold. I'm gonna leave the output size the exact same. And now the difference is I'm gonna press M on my keyboard. Or you can press this window up here, that's the materials editor. And if you've pressed M on your keyboard and you get a slate, the slate materials editor, you don't, you can always go to mode, switch to compact, and vice versa, but we're going to use the slate. First thing I want you guys to do is go to Arnold. Under materials, go to Arnold, then surface, and then standard surface. You can drag or double click to take the surface out. Okay, we can also minimize because we don't need to see all of that information. You can double click to make your surface, your materials larger, and if you double click on the name, you have all the options that you saw down at the bottom, but just so that you can modify it now. Okay, first thing I want to do is we're going to make a base coat for all of our entire scene. So what I'm going to do is take the specular down to 0. You can drag or type in 0 and press enter. I'm going to leave it as white. And what I'm going to do is, let me just move this over. I am going to, with my perspective selected, I'm going to go Control and A, and that will select everything. And what I can do now is actually let me rename the material. I'm just renaming it here. I'm just going to call this all. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to apply this to everything, so we have a nice standard matte material for our Arnold. And then the fourth icon over, assign material to selection, I'm going to click, and you can see our model got a lot lighter. Okay, so I'm going to cut this off now. And what I'm going to do now, with my camera view selected, I'm going to press render again. Now you'll notice that it is rendered completely differently. It's made like two pre-mattes, one really blurry, one really grainy. And then you'll notice, well, with these computers we only have 4 cores going around refining and creating the image. Now it's a lot better than the scanline render, but it's still poor. No lighting is in here, just some what do you call it, ambient occlusion. A tiny bit of ambient occlusion is being placed automatically, and this render took my computer 36 seconds. Now if you've done this, I want you to write down 36 seconds with a standard Arnold render.
But it doesn't come up.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start to add some lights in, and we're not going to do it the standard way through the create and lights and blah blah blah. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our plus sign here, our what is this called, our create tab. We're going to go to our lights, make sure that is highlighted in blue, and where it says standard we want to click on Arnold, and then we want to click Arnold again, and then just from outside of my window I want to click and drag. You can see I've got like this little yellow cube, and then I'm just going to place it down here so I can see it. Next thing I'm going to do is right click and move my light source. I'm going to bring it back a tiny bit, and then I'm going to go into its options in modify panel, and what I want to do is turn up my quads, the X and the Y quad. I'm going to turn this up to something relatively high, like 350 maybe, and 350. And as I've done that, you probably notice the ring has got a lot larger. This is the surface the light is coming through. And then what I'm going to do is click on our camera again, and then I'm going to press render production or shift Q. So the last render took 35 seconds. Oops, I made a mistake. Let me cancel. What I want to do is, I apologize, I need to turn up the light source because it's quite dark. So I've opened up the surface area that is shining from. I also need to turn up the intensity and the exposure. So I'm going to put this up to something like 12. That may be a bit high. 14, maybe this should be about 10. Let me put it as 10 for now. So intensity 10, exposure 14. Let's see what we get. So I'm going to click back on my camera view and then press the render button or shift and Q. Ooh, it's quite dark. We can do with turning it up a bit, but let's see how long this render takes. As you can see, a lot more volume has entered. It doesn't look as flat, but it's still nowhere near as good as we would want. And it's it's very grainy. But these computers are slow, so we're gonna have to be creative in how we do things.
Selected for me to be able to.
Okay, nearly done. Okay, so this took about 1 minute and it looked as good if not better than the scanline render with the surface area light. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up my intensity to 12, exposure to 16, render again. You can see it's a lot more lighter already.
Did it right.
You got 2 instead of 1.
So would you want us to put in the Word document?
The time is going to come up here. Yeah, when you're done, you keep the times, how long it took.
So this is the first one.
Okay. And if you're using a scanline render, yeah, you put scanline render, 1 light, how long it took.
I'm not using the skylight render now.
Yeah, that's the scanline.
So it's only for the skylight renders that I put it in the Word.
No, for everything you do. Just listen. Okay, So we can see with my results, yours may differ very sometimes. I'm using 12, 16, and our light looks a lot much better. So I have a door here. What I'm gonna do is cast a light shining through this door. So let me get rid, and this took 1 minute and 3 seconds. What I'm gonna do is, yo guys, can you keep it down please? What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna duplicate my light by holding down the shift key and dragging it over and placing it coming through this door. Press OK. Let me move it down a tad. And I can bring the light direction up and across. Okay, I'm gonna press the render button again. And as you can see straight away, there's like a drastic change because we have a side light coming in and cutting and diffusing our main light shining through the window. Now obviously we can manipulate how bright this light is, but you know, we're just gonna leave it as that. And then we're gonna try, I'm not even gonna try and fix the grain, but I'll show you how that works, because our model will take longer to render. Yo guys, please keep it down. Okay, this took 1 minute and 30 seconds, and as you can see, it's a lot better. What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna duplicate this frame by clicking on clone render frame window. I can minimize this, and then what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna click on render setup. I'm gonna click on Arnold renderer. I can mess around with all of these, but I'm gonna actually put my diffuse up, both of them by 2, because the diffuse is where the most of the lighting, the colors are gonna be on. So I'm gonna click render again. So we have our window here and our clone window down here. Just wait until it finishes and we'll bring it up. This is going to take a bit. Let's walk around. There's nothing there.
So that I've got my eye. I don't know what
Really, a storm around. Hey, shut up, man. We don't. We literally don't.
It's okay, Theo. Can you just tell them to keep it down? I'm actually trying to live stream here, yeah, and all it's just bare noise in the background.
There's 2 lights, man. Is it meant to be like that?
Have you changed renderers?
Have a what?
Change renderers.
What does that
Only
mean?
one. Only use one light. So delete one. So select it again, and then delete. Select it one more time. Press delete on the
Where?
keyboard. Delete.
Oh, the word.
Reverse. Then there's one.
So I can keep going, yeah?
Okay, this is still rendering. Can I bring up the other window? Nope.
Oh, I have to delete the other light as well.
If we're moving on, yeah.
No, but you just deleted both of the lights.
Because I think we're going to move on to the next one.
When you refresh,
Yeah, we're going to move.
the light will be gone. You don't have to do it that way, but if you have loads of lights, that's one way to do it. But is that you telling me how to delete it? But where's your light?
Yeah, keep going.
Switch renders to on.
Okay, pause. Delete that light now.
Delete this light.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just gonna leave this. And I'll chop it out the video later.
7A. Do that. Thank you.
What's wrong? Where's your camera? Yeah.
It's not coming up or anything.
You're on a different bit. Are you on this bit now? You're in Arnold. Yeah, in Arnold you don't use that light. Yeah? So now we're in Arnold. We do the render in Arnold here. Yeah, you've done that already. Yeah? Have you done that? You haven't done that? Okay, so we get rid of those lights for Arnold. Those lights were for the scanline render. Okay.
So let me click on that assign to model.
Yeah. So everything's.
Just move it over. What did I do wrong?
Okay, still rendering. You know what? I'm gonna stop it because it's been over 5 or so minutes, so let me cancel. Okay, and I can bring up my previous window, and straight away you can see the difference in the clarity of the image and the overall aesthetic. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring my numbers back down to represent this. So let's go back down. Was it diffuse 2 and diffuse ray depth 1? Okay, now that is done. What I'm going to do is press M on my keyboard to bring up another material, and I'm going to drag out a new standard surface. Make that big and minimize. And what I'm going to do now is going to make a base color on this red. So I'm going to make it like a deep red. Whoops, I did a mistake. I did a booey. Double click. Sorry, double click on the material. Make sure you do that. The base color. My base color is going to be red. Okay, I'm going to leave specular. Actually, I'm going to leave everything else. And then what I'm going to do is I'm only going to select my lights, my tall lights here. So select all 3 of them and go assign. So they've been assigned here, as you can see. Now I'm gonna render again. Let me position that like that. I'm gonna press render.
But it's still going.
That's the previous one. It will update.
So just leave.
No, this way. This way. Okay, as you can see, our new material is has a reflection on it and some specular, has all the main ones, and it's giving off a semi-realistic result. Now our last render took 1 minute and 29 seconds. You can see it down here. Let's exclude that 5-minute render which didn't go anywhere. And we're going to see how long this render took with an extra material. The more material we add, the more lights we add, everything will multiply and cause it to take longer to render. So we have to be careful, we have to be smart on the quality of the textures we use and where we have lights. Okay, this took 1 minute 32, so not much of a difference. Okay, so the next material I'm going to show you guys is how to make gloss. Now this is it's not really technical, but I will also link a website, the Arnold website, that shows you the specific numbers you need to use to get glass. Okay, so this is 132. Let's make a clone and get rid of that. Let's minimize. Now I'm going to open the materials. In the materials, I'm going to drag out another standard surface. Do the exact same thing. Minimize, make larger. Oops, you know what I didn't do? I didn't name this material. So I'm going to rename it lamp. I'm going to double click and rename this material glass. Yep. And what I'm going to do is on our base color, I'm going to take that down to 0. And you notice it's gone like a opaquish black. And then what I'm going to do is actually, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on our show backgrounds preview. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th icon, and you can see what's happening there. I'm going to go down to transmission. Now transmission used to be called transparency, same thing, opacity, transparency. Now it's called transmission. I'm going to put this to 1. And you can see that our ball has gone to a see-through ball. In the IOR for glass, what we want to use is 1.5. And this will change how the light refracts. So index of refraction, that's what that means. Why isn't it coming up? Index of refraction, it will show, calculate how the light refracts and bounces around. Okay, now we have our glass material here. We won't do much else to it. I'm gonna pick something which is glass. So I have this nice vase here. I'm gonna select it and then hit the assign materials. Now what I've done here for this model, I'm going to show you the wireframe override. I actually have water inside. So actually, why don't we make a water material for the water? So I'm going to press M. Bring out another standard surface. Do the exact same thing. Double click and rename it water. Now this is nearly the exact same as glass, but just a tiny bit different. I'm going to bring the base color to 0. I am going to put the IOR now to 1.33 and press enter. And then I'm going to put the transmission up to 1. But this time I'm going to change the color slightly, like just a tiny bit, to have like a grey, white, murky type of water, and press OK. Select the water now, just slow double click and then click assign. Okay, I'm gonna cut this off now. Click back onto my camera and then press the render button. With light source.
Huh?
With light.
With light.
The kitchen is very scenic. If a bit obvious. Something else with it.
Okay, sorry for the pause. Okay, so this render now took 1 minute and 38, and as you can see, we have our glass that is rendered quite shiny. We also have our water inside. It actually looks a bit like water. There's like a murky texture going on it. Yeah, so you know what I want you guys to do is I want you to let's keep these settings for now, yeah, because it's not too bad. Actually, let's bring up our clone window. Let's minimize that a bit. Actually, snap them. And you can see not much time was added, and you can see the different effects, and it actually takes a bit of the grain away. So let's get rid of them. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to go make multiple materials. Rename them. So let's double click. Let's just call this kitchen wall, and you can actually add textures in here. So actually, if I do the plus, you can see diffuse base color. You can drag out general, get yourself a bitmap, and load in a texture. Let me see if I have anything. Let's go desktop. Images, view large icon. What do I have? Anything I can use? Nope. Nope, I don't have any images I can use. Let me get one from online. Let's see. Okay, let's get this one's a duplicated file. Let's use this and go save image as. Let me just throw it to my downloads. KT. Let's go to my downloads folder. Here, open. So you can see our texture is on this now. Specular, let me put down to 0.5. We don't want it too sharp. Sharp? Not sharp. We don't want it too shiny. That's what I meant to say. And let's go back here. Default shading, and let's select the wall. So I'm gonna select my wall texture. Actually, Alt Q. Select the wall. Just do the whole thing. Yeah.
At the top, round.
And I'm gonna click the assign key. Also here I want to show shaded material in viewport. This is something you've all done before. This is a bit crooked, so let's go in and mess with it. So we're gonna go to the UVW map, click on a box, and let's scale that to something not too dodgy. So let's put 120. We put 124. Okay, that don't look too rough. Okay, let me collapse that. Yes. Cut that off. Cut off the hide, and then let's render this out also. Actually, I did the roof. Silly me. No matter. Let's leave it in. Okay, this texture is a bit rough, but it doesn't matter. This is an example regardless. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop the stream now and leave you guys to get on with experimenting. Okay, let's leave this to see how long this takes. Let's see how long this takes.
I'm trying to get to the door. Are you still recording? Where's the door?